to One Stop Central, brought to you by Central Times. I'm Kyle Schaefer,
And I'm Mike Parker.
and this is our guest.
Alan Chen.
So, Alan, how's it going?
I'm doing fairly well. E-learning's been an interesting ride for probably all of us at this point.
Yeah, it's an interesting year.
Especially if you're taking a very hands-on class like I am with Adventure. We haven't been doing a lot of the skills that we're supposed to learn. We've just been watching videos, so that's fun.
Sounds like my gym class.
Yeah.
What is the point of PE at this point?
I
mean,
I
just-
don't know.
I feel like it helps the teachers more than the students because it's a job, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
Do you remember last year for gym? Did they make you guys do walks around the neighborhood or stuff?
No.
Like you have to take a picture of you going for a walk or something?
No, because I was in leadership, so it was, for us it was
okay.
more.
Personally, I always have very chill PE teachers, so they're like, okay, whatever, just go do it. I always have very chill ones. This year I have a more strict one, but
I have a pretty chill one this year.
My teacher's also fairly chill in terms of as in Venture. He sits us down, shows us a couple videos depending on what we're learning for that day, and then says, "Hey, you're off," and that's my third period, and I have fourth period lunch. So then
Nice.
that's the fun thing is I get off before 11, so it's like 10:50 something. I get off, and that's my entire day for Monday, for Tuesday, Thursday. So
Very nice. So speaking of coronavirus and e-learning, are you in a school orchestra or
I'm in school orchestra, and I'm in two ensembles out of school.
you want to talk about that?
Sure. We had our for my big orchestra that I'm in. We actually did in person. A lot of the in-person stuff since like August 30th, I think. That was when we first met, and we were all in the same kind of orchestra setup where it's the strings and then the brass in the back, woodwinds in the back. And as things went on and as cases climbed, we had to change the setup. So the strings for our final for our concert that was in November, we had the strings out in the house, and then the woodwinds and the brass out on stage. And we only had rehearsed in that setup maybe twice before the concert. But other than that, it was actually, I expected a harder adjustment from being together on stage to being out past 30 feet from each other. And no, it wasn't actually that bad for our ensemble. And then the funny thing was, a couple days later, I got an email from the orchestra saying, "Hey, there was a kid. We can't say his name because still child, still minor, but he was tested positive for COVID. We're not telling you the ensemble because that's child youth minor privacy again. And then they're like, yeah, you low exposure, you don't need a quarantine, nothing like that. So I feel like some of the in-person stuff at this point is starting to get kind of risky, especially with the I think 11.5% 7-day positivity rate that we've been having recently. It's been steady around there, so it's kind of iffy on a lot of the in-person stuff that we're doing.
So you guys not going to be traveling this year like you have in the past?
We possibly might. It depends on, because of course the FDA ruled last night that the Pfizer vaccine is good to go. We can start rolling them out, and they said, hey, you might not be able to get everybody vaccinated or the general population should begin vaccinating by, I think, spring. That's what they said. So it might be a little too late for us, especially since our tour or usually my music tour is on, I think, July roughly, for a couple weeks, and we had to cancel last summer's because that's when kind of the height of it happened, and we were supposed to go to DC, play out a bunch of kind of once in a lifetime gigs, and we still got a couple of them, but some of the experience we lost because of COVID. So that's unfortunate, but It is what it is at this point. So.
It sucks. What does your last ones look like? You're like traveling.
Our last tour was Spain and Morocco, and that was fun. We flew in through O'Hare to Madrid, and that was. I didn't sleep on the plane right there, and I didn't sleep. I probably stayed up for 36 hours.
30. Oh, I can't. I can barely. Like the second 12 o'clock rolls around, I either fall asleep dead or I just go into crazy mode. So I
Yeah.
can't imagine that.
36 hours, and it was in the height of. I think we were talking about this. It was height of the heat wave.
Oh.
So we landed there like 7, 8,
How many degrees would you say it was?
probably 100, like 80 to 100 around that. And because we were in the center of Madrid, so it was like the city and everything.
And for those of you that don't know about European countries, they don't really do air conditioning. They're not the biggest fans. So, well, okay, okay. That I didn't intend it for that joke, but I'll take it. Yeah, they're so that's kind of crazy. That 100
was-
degrees and no air conditioning.
No air
whatsoever.
conditioning. Stayed up for 36 hours. I started, like my body just started shutting down. Like you could feel like it was bad. And then I think once I got to the hotel, after maybe a couple hours of my roommate and I talking because we're really good friends, he goes to the north. I pretty much just passed out until my friend woke me up saying, "Hey, we need to go. That we're doing, I think, some dinner thing." So it was crazy because that was all we did was walk around and look at stuff for the majority of the day. So that was super fun, and we pretty much went everywhere from Madrid south, and got to go see the Mediterranean Ocean. And at one point when I can't remember exactly what city we're in, but we went from Spain to Morocco. So that was interesting. Morocco, we spent probably 5 hours, I would say, there. And what happened was we just took a tour of places. Let's just say the alleys and streets are very, very narrow. At some points we had to walk single file, like just down an alley because it was that narrow. And it was fun just walking around, getting to see different places, and then I got a death glare from a street vendor because
Wow.
because it was
interesting.
one of those hecklers that would like stand outside of buildings, and when people came out, they would come out, they would ask for, "Hey, do you want to buy something?" Stuff like that. So our tour group went into like a herbal medicine shop, and they were talking about, "Hey, these are what herbs do different things, and this is how we make them
What
into
kind of things
medicine."
they say the herbs do?
Some of them slimming tea, so it's like before I think Ramadan fasting, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They would drink that, and you wouldn't need to eat stuff like that.
Oh, I thought they would be more like weight loss kind of thing.
Some of them are. I can't remember.
Do they
exactly.
actually work?
Never tested them.
Because
So,
I don't know. I'm not kind of the guy that's saying like, I'm kind of suspicious of that kind of stuff. You
Yeah.
know?
It's like snake oil.
Yeah. Drink this. Eat these fish eyes.
Mm.
It'll kill your cancer. You're okay.
Yeah.
That's just crazy to me.
Mercury makes you live longer.
Yeah. And then so they were buying some of the stuff because it wasn't a lot of weight loss stuff. It was more like, hey, this is to help kind of help your body and stuff like that. So people were buying it, buying stuff. So I came down, and there's no doors, right? It's just an open kind of archway, and what happened was there was a line of maybe 7, 8 of these street vendor hecklers. And one comes up to me, tries to tell me that I'm to buy stuff. I have maybe 200 euros on me at the
What
time.
kind of stuff are they trying to get you to
Like-
buy?
Small little trinkets like a camel, one of those little like drum things,
Oh, like
magnets, T-shirts.
Like a maraca?
Yeah, kind of. It was one
Can you?
of those,
Why did you buy it? A maraca in Morocco? That would be hilarious, dude.
Yeah. But I kept telling him to go away. But probably the fourth time I told him like, hey, I put my foot down. I don't want you near me. Just please back up. He just gave me the death glare. And as I exited, he was still giving me the death glare as we are all heading back to the ferry.
Now, let me ask. That night, did you push your bed up against the door, or did you just hold a steak knife the entire night?
We were not in Morocco. We were in Spain. Because it was 5 hours, so we were there.
Oh,
for 5
that makes
hours,
sense.
And then we
Okay.
traveled back. We weren't in Morocco.
Were you at all afraid that somehow this man would take the entire trip from Morocco
No,
to Spain
because it was like an
just
hour,
to get you?
It was like an hour bus ride from the shore, from the port to our hotel.
This man was very dedicated.
But no, I didn't feel too bad. Let's just say the culture in Europe is completely different.
Oh yeah, people don't expect that whatsoever.
And
Have you ever been to Europe?
No, I haven't. It's sounds interesting though.
it's very interesting. So our group decided there was a pool on the roof and it was like a nice day and it's still kind of hot. We decided that we were going to swim around. Let's just say there were maybe 3 people that weren't dressed at all, and that was kind of a weird thing for a lot of us because we've never seen that, especially in public, because that was
Sorry, where was this? Like a pool?
yeah, it was Spain. It was in Spain on a pool.
I've seen that in Germany too. Like, there's public fountains. You'll just see like naked kids and like adults sometimes like kicking around in there, and it's like we Americans, we're not really used to we're trained to like look like nakedness is like something you're not supposed to do. Like in England too. So I remember whenever I was like walking by a fountain like that, I would literally just do like.
Pretty much.
Yeah, because like I didn't know how to
Pretty
react
much.
to that. It made me very uncomfortable. So.
Yeah, a lot of the people afterwards, we were talking. It's like, did you guys see those people? Like, what are they doing? And it's like it's a completely different culture, compared to the United States. That was, we went to the Mediterranean Ocean. There was a beach, and there was still people doing that, and I was like, oh god.
It's kind of like in China, like it's very similar, but in a different way. Like how we kind of look at in China and some Asian countries where they believe dogs or cats and such are like delicacies, normal things they eat, you know.
Yeah.
While here we think that's like crazy and evil. It's just 2 different cultures, you know.
It's completely different.
I mean, in India, they believe that cows are sacred. You shouldn't eat those.
And speaking of Asian countries, my dad, my family grew up in Taiwan, and my dad, he was forced to serve in the military because it was, I think it's still a conscript service.
Right now, really?
Yeah, it's like you have to serve for a certain amount of time, and he served in the Air Force. I still have his uniform and stuff like that. And he said that sometimes when there are like stray dogs that roam around the base, some of the guys would shoot it, bring it back, and then just eat it because that was kind of the thing that was part of the culture. And I personally didn't understand it at first until people like, why do Asian people eat dog? I'm like, I don't understand. I need to look into it further, but I know it's a culture thing.
Well, I mean, it's just like I said, like in India, you know, like they would look at us like we're evil or weird because we eat cows.
Yeah.
Or in Arabia, they don't eat pigs. They think we're not good people for eating those, or that it's a cultural thing. It's just different cultures decide on what's okay to eat, and we in America and more Western countries decide that dogs, because of how they've helped us in the past and how we kind of see human features in their faces and stuff, you know, that we don't want to eat them. Not that Asian cultures haven't, just that they've decided that okay.
Like,
it's all right.
I think as of now, like it's more of a special thing you eat. It's not like regular. Like
No, yeah. A lot of people make that like assumption that like
Yeah.
every single day they just like pop down that like a Welsh corgi on a nice little bit. Like that's not how it works, dude.
That's not it.
Have you ever had that before? Like Americans mistaking your culture or like cultural unawareness in Americans?
Yeah. I remember like I think it was 8th grade. We were in Spanish class. There was this one kid. I'm not going to name names because I want to protect him. But he said something that I think I was one of the only Asians in the room at the time.
You were.
And he's like, "Why did they eat dogs and stuff like that?" And looked directly at me.
Didn't he also say some pretty like offensive? Like he didn't say Asians. He said some pretty.
Yeah. I looked at him. I'm like,
like a very offensive term.
I
for
looked at
Asian
him. I was
people.
like, hey, that's not who I am. That's not what my culture, what my nationality, what anybody else in the kind of Eastern Asia, so like
Mhm.
China, Japan, Taiwan, Korea. That's not kind of what we. That's not our overarching culture that we have.
Mhm.
Especially Taiwan. Taiwan's actually Taiwan, Japan, Korea. They're all fairly Western in kind of their thinking, because Taiwan is a democratic system. Japan, democratic system again. Korea, South Korea, I have to specify democratic system. Um, because we have the
Yeah, yeah.
North Korea
I,
there.
I was for a second there. I was like, Korea as a whole isn't like. They kind of equal each other out, one being like super democratic, and all.
Mhm.
But
I heard eating dog in China is actually kind of rare now. I
It
heard
is,
it's like
yeah,
more
it
and more
is.
like very uncommon. Like
Yeah,
out here,
these
it's
were-
probably more common to say that
What-
than to
Mhm.
someone to
Western
actually eat it.
culture is kind of worming its way into China.
And it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing to see, honestly,
Mhm.
because with I'm specifically talking about Taiwan because I don't know too much about China and the CCP, that area, but with Taiwan, it used to be not recognized by. I think it wasn't recognized by like 170 some countries because the Communist Party said, "Hey, Taiwan's not a country anymore. They're part of us. So just you."
Have they
say-
done anything to take over at all? Or?
As of now, no.
'Cause
But
I know about that, and I'm assuming a lot of our listeners or watchers also do.
yeah,
But it's I've always wondered. Do you want to talk about like your opinions on why Taiwan isn't a part of it, or why they keep saying this?
they've have their own independent government.
Mhm.
They have their own independent currency. They have their own military. They have their own dialect. They have their own like kind of certain. They have their own way of preparing food. They have their own. There's a lot of different things compared China and Taiwan, and I think as of now, a lot more countries are starting to recognize Taiwan as some sovereign nation, not as a country necessarily, but more, hey, you're separate from China. And the CCP really doesn't like that. I think it was the Czech. Yeah, I think it was the Czech. One of the Czech representatives went over to Taiwan to discuss different trade deals and stuff like that, and CCP said, "No, you're not to recognize Taiwan," and that's kind of how they've done it because remember, China is a very big economic power
Mhm.
within the world. So, and they fund like a ton of things that we have and produce
Mhm.
massive amounts of products that we use, and they say, "Hey, no, don't recognize it, or else we're gonna
Cancel all trade with you.
we're gonna impose economic sanctions consequences to you."
It's crazy how everyone like I'm seeing in a lot of industries. Me personally, I know a lot about movies.
Mhm.
I'm seeing how they're kind of like kowtowing to everything they ask for.
Mhm.
They it's pretty crazy. There's a few. Did you know in movies and stuff in China they won't allow ghosts?
There's quite a few things they don't allow in
Yeah.
China.
Well, no.
I remember,
Yeah.
was
But
it-
that's in movies. Like they won't. Like they don't allow Ghostbusters over there.
yeah. There was a blatant example. I think it was Top Gun.
Yes.
The new Top Gun that they released. The previous one had Japan, Taiwan, United States, and I think UN.
Yeah, I think so.
Now they, because it was the old Top Gun was under independent. It was not part of China,
Mhm.
or related to China, or China wasn't funding it.
Mm-hmm.
Because China's now funding it, they said remove Japan, remove Taiwan, flags from the jacket.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how powerful the CCP can be. It's kind of that saying, like a lot of people say, I hate China. It's like, no, I hate the government. I like the people. I hate the government. Because the people aren't responsible for what they're doing, especially the government, because just how the government is structured is an interesting way to see it. So that's kind of what I think about China's.
Uh,
But I think we should still have ties with them because
Mhm.
they're still very powerful. But that's,
Yeah. Do you? So something I'm curious on your opinion on is the way business in America is structured with China. Like, for example, the biggest example is probably
Actually,
China.
do you mind
is
before you
Disney.
say that? Could I ask him one question relating
Yeah,
to
sure.
the people you like and
Mhm.
stuff? Something that I've always heard about governments and what we're kind of hearing with, especially with a lot of things that are going on in America, complacency and people not standing up against their government
Mhm.
makes them just as bad as the government. Do you believe in that statement?
It depends on what is in place because
As in, like, how they're kind of reacting to their re-education camps,
Mhm.
how no one's standing up against that,
I
or
mean,
Tiananmen Square.
I don't think they can because remember, the Communist Party, they monitor everything.
Hmm.
So if the second you say something bad, social credit. They implemented social credit, so it's kind of like a credit score but for a person. So the second you say something bad, it drops your social
Mhm.
credit. And I'm not 100% sure, but they can kind of, if you saw what happened in
Tiananmen Square.
that's or Tiananmen Square and Wuhan when it
Yeah.
first started, they like if you violated COVID lockdowns, they would break down your door and send you somewhere.
And they'll never be found again.
Yeah, and
I-
that's kind of I think they can't do anything because it's such a oppressive regime
I think, yeah.
or like government that the second you say something bad or say
Mhm.
something dissenting that they already know who you are, they already know where you live, kind of that kind of thing, and like that it kind of you're kind of using fear to say, hey, just don't say anything, just let us do.
My mom travels over there a lot, and she actually wanted to visit Tiananmen Square. It's not marked on any GPSs, no nothing. And when she got there, I don't have the picture anymore, but she sent me a picture of Tiananmen Square. There's on every single like post everywhere. There's cameras everywhere.
Cameras.
Yeah, and you can actually.
everywhere
And the
there.
worst part is about it. She said, is that she wanted to catch it on video, but like someone came up and said, "Hey, move along."
Hey, you can't.
Yeah, you can't take a
film
video here. Move along.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Is that you saw them moving? Like you could see
They're-
they're like actively watching people. Like it's not like a
Yeah.
lot of them you see at businesses where they can look back. There's like a robbery or something.
Mhm.
They're just actively watching at all times, making sure there's no dissent, which is very scary. And I agree with you about how I don't really see how they can stand up
Yeah,
against them.
because like in Tiananmen Square, like if they do stand up against them, the military can hold them, and they're, and it can be very brutal if they try to
Mhm.
revolt because that's probably gonna be what happened in Tiananmen Square again.
Mhm.
So
So why don't we go back to your question?
Yeah. I was gonna ask, what do you think? Because it seems like you're pretty against China,
Mhm.
like how their government's structured.
yeah,
Against the
Yes.
government, yeah, the CCP.
Yeah, so-
CCPD. Is
In
that
a way,
CCP.
Chinese Communist Party.
Ah, thank you.
in a way, American business now is really affiliated with the government. Like Disney's like the biggest one I could think of. off the
Yeah,
top of my
there's a
head.
lot
Like,
of companies that
they
shut
add
up
things
on
for China, and then they take things out that's like against China.
Mhm.
They really like China. Is the point?
We were talking about this last night with the Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
How they had like a gay couple or two women kissing in the background,
Yeah.
but in just the spots that they can put in America so that Americans can see that Disney is progressive, but then erase that out for the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, and it's
Just for the Chinese people, and it's for China, and it's disturbing how
Mhm.
they do that.
how I see it is, it's they have a very big foothold around the country, around the world,
Mhm.
globally, and remember everything is tied to money at this point in time, within the country. Money can buy you a lot of things, so having having China being some of the biggest sponsors for some of these big companies, means that they have a lot more say in what you can and cannot do. So that's kind of where I see it as right now. It's like it can be a bad thing. It also can be a good thing, because the companies are still getting funded and still producing products, but they have that kind of thing where, hey, do what we want, or we're gonna take away some of your funding. So that's kind of that double-edged sword kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I totally agree. Speaking of China, like we're with movies and stuff.
Mhm.
You know that new Mulan movie?
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Are we talking about the
the re-education camp, and I bring that up because I want to hear your thoughts on that. Why hasn't everyone all the time talks about how the global community did nothing during the Holocaust, how they didn't stand up, and while they may not have known everything, they may have known like the 100% the extent to what they were doing.
Mhm.
They still knew that something was going on,
Yeah.
and they did nothing. Do you think that that's what's going on here? Like this is very similar to that?
Very possible. Very possibly. But as of
There's evidence. I think there's some evidence that they're actually using some of those incarcerated and taking their organs, selling them on the black market.
I haven't heard about that claim yet, so you can't verify.
It hasn't been 100%
But
verified, so I'm
I
not
think-
saying that that's like completely true. But
I think
if some of the things that they've said over there, it's just
it's very bad. The conditions are very bad. And I think that how I see it is the world doesn't want another war, because you see how a lot of these countries have taken kind of a passive approach to a lot of conflicts, where it's a lot more there's a lot more diplomatic approach to it, because I think that's kind of what's happening. But right now, I think the China, with how they're acting and everything, has not exactly taken, but has made a fair bit of new enemies. India, they had skirmishes on the border with that. Taiwan has been a long kind of, especially with the current president, because there's two different parties. One that's a little more pro-China, one that's anti-China. And I think the anti-China party right now, I can't remember the name exactly, but they're in power. So the president's like, hey, no, we don't want to deal with China, stuff like that. Russia, because China actually, I think, took a city from one of their borders. That happened. Japan, as of now, there's a lot of, and then pretty much with the past administration, the Trump, I would like to say Trump administration, the United States was also pretty big kind of quote unquote enemy to China because of that, all the rhetoric that Trump has said, and all the trade tariffs and stuff like that we've put on them. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now. European countries are starting to recognize Taiwan as a sovereign nation. That upsets China, as I said before, and if China makes any sort of, I think, aggressive military move, that it might be condemned. And they might not do anything because we don't want another war. But I think if it gets bad enough, it might cause another war, because that is very likely. It's because if you look at how the European countries handled the Nazi Germany during World War II, they had it was a lot more passive. It was like, hey, go ahead and take this. We're not going to care. Just don't do anything else. They take another thing. It's kind of that. Let's see how far we can push that envelope. And at some point, they're going to have to put their foot down. So,
where do you think that foot will be? When do you think they're going to cross that line?
it's either going to be either with India or United States. It's going to be actually India, Taiwan, United States, because with India they're already kind of there's been skirmishes along the border. They do anything else, they're gonna escalate. With Taiwan, it's probably 80 miles, I think. Maybe I can't remember if it's miles or kilometers, but they're fairly close to mainland China, and they can, from what I've heard during times when U.S. ambassadors came to Taiwan, they were flying jets around them all the time, preparing. Like they're increasing their navy also.
Do you think at do you think that if they were to actually invade Taiwan, do you think that the global community would stand up for them?
Depends on the administration that we have in the United States, because we sold a lot of arms to Taiwan. I think the recent one was like $7.8 billion worth of arms to Taiwan. And we're continuing to sell more to them. Just Taiwan needs to ask, Congress needs to approve, and we ship them over. Of course, it's probably much more complicated than that, but I'm just generalizing here. And I think the U.S. would probably be one of the biggest backers of Taiwan. I think Japan will also get involved because that's kind of their interests. And I think those two would be enough to bring in some other countries that might,
or at least tell China to back off.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yes,
Alan.
it's been a very interesting talk.
Very, very interesting. And yeah, I'm very happy you came on the show.
Yes, very happy.
So,
yeah.
It's been a lot of fun, dude.
It's been nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad. I hope I hope it's good to get this kind of out on the airways. You know, have people hear about Taiwan, which I know with coronavirus going on, a lot of people aren't paying much attention to.
They've been doing very well with coronavirus. I think last time I checked was they had it's one of the lowest in the world right now.
Well, is that because of their smaller population than most?
No, they live in most of the big cities are very, very populated, and those are mainly where they're very dense. So I think it's because they had to deal with I can't remember, was it SARS or MERS, like one of the recent outbreaks. They had to deal with them by themselves because the international community couldn't help them or didn't help them. So they had to come up with their own version of, hey, this is what we're going to do if a pandemic happens. And it so far seems very effective, I think.
Do you think the U.S. should take on there?
Possibly. With how, it depends because of just how big the United States is and how independent all the states are. So that it might not be, it might work in some places, might not, because it just depends on what the government thinks.
It's kind of like how, like with the Autobahn, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, how everyone was like, we did it in the end, but it's kind of hard when you're building a highway system that worked in Germany, but Germany's like about the size of like Texas or so, when you're making it all over an entire, basically a gigantic country, almost the size of a continent, pretty much, because we're the mainland part of North America.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to leave off for today, and we'll see you next time on One Stop Central.
Stay
Thanks
cool.
again to Alan.
Yeah, thanks again. You want to say anything else before we go?
No. Yeah, I'm good. It's been nice to be on here. I hope I can come back on again.
Yeah, I think we'd love that.
Yeah, well, see you next time on One Stop Central.
Peace.